You've probably heard the term playing outside. Musically, this is a pretty broad term focusing on a soloist or an improvisation that leverages tones that are harmonically further and further away from the tonic center. In other words, the further sonically they are from the tonic center, the more outside these sound, because we're expecting a certain amount of tension and release inside a chord progression or a song or the bed for a solo. And when you start moving out further and further out from that, the expected tonality, those notes become more and more outside. Now, when you're trying to figure out how you're going to start doing this, if you're on the beginning of this journey, it seems like there are so many. Is every single note available? How do you start to play outside? What's outside? What's not outside? Is there any starting point? So it can be a little daunting about really just where to begin this effort. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today you will learn how to play outside. And it's not the old kind of playing outside where your parents just needed some alone time. This is about adding some sort of sonic and harmonic depth, some sophistication to your soloing, and specifically your improvisation, right? Can you move away from the tonic signature far enough away and safely return? I'm going to explain what this is. I'm going to give you examples of how far it can go, and then I'm going to share some tips about how to get started doing this. I have a few mechanics that I'm going to give to you that basically allow you to get started on this journey, playing outside. Let's get started. Okay, let's play outside. Again, this concept is pretty broad, playing notes that are further and further away from the tonic center. That gets you those outside tones. That forces that interesting or challenging harmonic relationship, that tension and release. We're going to be in the key of, or the tonal center of A Dorian. Just because, why not? Playing this great chord progression, just A minor 7 to D9. This is like a 1-4 in A Dorian. The A minor 7 chord, 5, 5, 5, 5 on the A, D, G, and B string. And then the D9 chord in the center 4 strings is 5, 4, 5, 5. It's a great sort of early fusion progression. It's in some prog rock stuff, Carlos Santana, it's used everywhere. And it outlines and is built from the Dorian mode. Now, the idea of playing outside is selling these sort of harder harmonic relationships to hear, the really tense ones. The easiest thing to hear is going to be the roots of these two chords. Here's A and D. Super easy to understand. arguably the hardest thing to hear is going to be the note that's a half step below one of these. Let's just take this G sharp, for example. This is hard to sell. It's a hard sell. It's arguably the hardest sell. It's a half step away. But now listen when I just give it to you a little bit, every once in a while. A little easier to take. A little easier to take because I just gave you a little bit of it. I just forced that massive amount of tension just for a second. Just like, whoa, what was that? And I'm going somewhere else. I'm just going to drop this here. I'm going to leave you with this super uncomfortable feeling for a very, very short period of time, and then I'm moving on. So that's just demonstrating sort of how far out it goes, right? I just sold you this. And I did it in a way that was basically palatable. You could take it, I hope. Now, I'm going to give you another mechanism. When we talk about target notes, I'm sure you've heard of target notes before. We're talking about targeting the notes that are in the chord during your improvisation to basically outline the chords that are coming. So that would be A minor over the A chord and D over the D chord. Here's A minor, D. I'm playing a pentatonic scale and ending on a note in the D chord. Right? I'm targeting the notes that are in this D chord. Here's an interesting idea. Let's flip that over. When the A minor comes, I'm only going to play D triads. And when the D chord comes, I'm only going to play A minor triads. And I'm not going to just play the chords. I'm going to use it as a way to sort of phrase some improvisation. But I'm selling you the opposite of what you're hearing. So again, D over the A minor and A minor over the D. Here we go. Interesting. I'm selling you the exact opposite of what you're hearing. I'm playing D major chords over the A minor, and I'm playing A minor chords over the D. But I'm doing it in a way that gets you this light, airy, interesting sound. I'm forcing a lot of tension, but I'm playing with it, and I'm not necessarily forcing it on you, and I'm being deft and gentle with it. Okay, so that's an interesting idea. That's one idea you can take. Now, I want to show you something else, which I call diatonic pentatonics. And I was given this idea by Scott Henderson. I took a lesson from him a long time ago. He's a fantastic fusion player. Sort of got really famous in the 90s with a band called Tribal Tech. Worth investigating. This thing is what I call diatonic pentatonics. And diatonic means of a key. So we're in the key of G. Even though we're in A minor, A Dorian, for those of you who are very mode savvy, you'll know that Dorian, A Dorian, is the second mode in the key of G. Now, I'm not going to get into all the modes because there are other videos on that, but in the key of G, which we're in, even though we're hearing the tonal center of A minor, there are scales and chords that are built from this key when you harmonize the key of G. I'm going to take the three pentatonic scales, the three minor pentatonic scales that fit in this key. The first one is over Dorian, that's A Dorian. The third mode of the G major scale is Phrygian. It's also minor, and it's over B. So I'm going to play a B minor pentatonic scale. And the sixth of that key is the last pure minor scale, and that's called Aeolian. And I'm going to play a minor pentatonic scale over E. So I'm going to use the same progression. I'm going to use my A minor pentatonic scale. I'm going to superimpose B minor pentatonic and E minor pentatonic. Here's the deal. These are diatonic pentatonic. Each one of these 5-note scales has notes from the G major scale and only notes from the G major scale. They don't have any wrong notes in them, but their context is interesting and different. Which of the 5 notes are they using? So we're going to go back to the progression. Here's my A minor pentatonic scale. Here's B minor pentatonic. E minor pentatonic. B. A. That was B minor. Now I'm going to move the minor pentatonic scale for E down here because it's a little closer and I don't want to be jumping all over the place. So here's A minor pentatonic scale. B minor. E minor. Back to A. Interesting. These scales contain diatonically correct information. So while they're inside, and while they're definitely diatonic, in other words, you're not making any mistakes, you're not playing any wrong notes, you're forcing different context, right? You're forcing notes from the scale, from the origin scale, into this new tonality that may or may not be easy for your audience to hear. Okay, the last thing I want to share is what I call chromaticism. And chromaticism, of course, is just the chromatic scale is all 12 tones in the harmonic series, unlike a major scale or a pentatonic scale that have a constrained set of notes, 7 notes or 5 notes. The chromatic scale is all 12, meaning anything goes. But if you just feel like chromaticism is just playing any note, that doesn't actually work. Because it's just a blob of nothingness. Chromaticism works great with a motif and movement. So in other words, if you've got somewhere to go or you're going from somewhere to somewhere else, throwing in some chromaticism helps build that tension really fast and then releases it. Here's a great example. We already know the A minor pentatonic scale is going to work. And the B minor scale. Here are these 2 boxes in the middle of those scales. Same thing in B. I'm going to just stitch them together with the one that's in between them, not in the key at all. Here's another example. Just using this little motif from B minor, sort of a B minor position, going down a half step at a time, landing on something that makes sense. Right? Chromaticism. Really, really helps sort of move from one place to the other with this great sort of opportunity to build a tremendous amount of tension and then release it right away. So there's 3 ideas. Sort of forcing those other sounds from the target notes, right? Sort of forcing the notes from the opposite chord, the diatonic pentatonics, and if you're paying attention, you probably are saying to yourself, well, if A minor and B minor and E minor work in the key of G, in other words, A Dorian, wouldn't G major, C major, and D major work as well? And that's true. C major, D major. They all work. They all work because they have notes that are inside the key. So they're diatonic, pentatonic. And then finally, that idea about chromaticism. Not necessarily super useful as just, the sort of clown run, but much more useful when you take an idea, a motif, a little pattern, and you move it around and you're really forcing massive sort of harmonic tension and then releasing it right away. Calm, tense, calm. That's what you want to do with chromaticism. Okay, so there it is. There are the concepts behind sort of getting started with this idea of playing outside. And I just wanted to cover a couple more things. Sometimes you can hear tonalities that sound very, very challenging, but those may or may not be outside. And I'll give you an example. There's a tonality built off the A dominant diminished scale. And this is an advanced theoretical idea, so I'm not going to teach you about that scale right now, but that scale creates this chord, which is an A7 flat 9. And the scale that belongs over this chord sounds very odd and strange, right? But it's not outside. This is a very inside sound because the scale and the chord I'm playing are completely related. Right? Weird sounding, but inside. Here's another example. There's a Miles Davis tune called Jean Pierre that goes like this. It's like A minor 6, minor tonality, right? Now listen to this, very interesting. It's a minor tonality, but Miles Davis, the very first note he plays for the melody is the major third. So he's forcing you to hear this. That major third has nothing to do with the tonality. That's outside, right? So you've got your tonality set up. Whatever that tonality is, it dictates what's inside and what's outside. So playing outside is really taking it and saying, how far do you want to explore beyond what's expected in that tonal center? Anyway, here I am blathering again. I've tabbed all this stuff out if you're interested. Those diatonic pentatonics, very, very cool place to start. I've tabbed all that stuff out. That can be found on my Patreon page, and that's linked in the description below. Head on over there if you want the tabs, and any support over there really fuels this whole thing, and I'm greatly appreciative of that. I hope you find this interesting. I hope playing outside is something that you get curious about, and that this is a really good starting point for your adventure down that road. All right, I'll see you next time.